Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we are reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, 3rd chapter, verse 38. Dumena vriyate vachnir yata darsho malena cha yatolbena vrito garbas tata te nadam avritam. Do we read word by word? Or just translation?
I think you can just proceed without
Translation.
that. But if you'd like to,
No,
it's
okay.
okay.
So translation. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So the topic here is lust. What is lust? We are going to speak tonight. Purport. There are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity by which his pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestations, like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, and the womb about the embryo. When the lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be a little perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary where there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to a cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position. For the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and the beasts, and the smoke-covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of human being, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness, and if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke in the fire, fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivating of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. Again the verse. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So now we are in 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called Karma Yoga. So one of the main topics here is duty. Duty means that every object or every living entity has some obligations, something that they have to do. And this is important part of especially of the human existence. Humans supposed to have the idea of duty. Nowadays not all humans have this. Many humans would like just to have the freedom not to do anything, any duty from morning till evening. But generally human life is meant for performing of some duty. So in this third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the idea comes that everyone should know their duty and should perform this duty, and if possible they should be able to perform this duty for the sake of giving pleasure to the Supreme, Krishna. So after Krishna explaining many different points in connection with duty or performing our karma, our activities to Arjuna, for example, that karma or duty should be performed for the pleasure of Krishna. Yagyartat karma no nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartat karma kaunteya moksha karma samachara. If one is performing his duty, his work, for the pleasure to give satisfaction to Yagya or Krishna, this will become cause for liberation. Otherwise, his work will become a cause for bondage. It will create suffering. So after Krishna explains these things, after explaining also the point that great personalities, they should act in such a way exemplary for others so that everybody should follow their example. And Krishna is saying, even if someone is free from duty, he has to perform his duty just to give a good example for others. Otherwise, they will stop performing their duties. So no wonder why nowadays social system not always works very nicely, because many of the leaders of the society, they don't really perform properly their duties, so everybody is following. Yat yat acharati shrestas tat tat evataro janaha. Whatever the great personalities are doing, everybody is following their example. So then, coming to these verses, Arjuna is asking question after hearing all these instructions in connection with duty and sacrificing our work, giving the result from our work for the pleasure of Krishna. Arjuna is asking, so why sometimes we know what is our duty, we know what we have to do, and still we do something else, something that we should not do? How is this possible? What's the reason for this? And then Krishna, as an answer, is saying, well, in the previous verse, verse 37, Krishna is saying, there is only one reason for this, to know what you're supposed to do and not to do it. And this reason is called Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajaguna Samudbhava, lust or Kama. And gradually, if this lust is not satisfied, it becomes anger, and so on and so on. This anger leads to illusion, bewilderment of memory, and gradually we go downwards. We are degrading, our life becomes degraded. So now, what is this lust? What is this thing that is actually pushing us to do something that we know we shouldn't do, and still we cannot do anything, and we are forced to do it? What is lust? What is the nature of lust? Well, Srila Prabhupada is describing in these purports, in the previous purport, that lust is actually our perverted love for Krishna. So originally we are pure spirit souls, and we are meant to do service, to do activities which give pleasure to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to Krishna. when we don't want to do that, and when we put ourselves in the center, and instead of trying to give pleasure to Krishna, rather we try to give pleasure to ourselves, selfishly, then suddenly, instead of love towards Krishna in our heart, this love is becoming transformed into lust, or extremely strong, we could say even passionate desire, but not desire to do something for someone else, but rather to do this same thing for your personal pleasure. Selfish, egocentric gratification. And at some point this becomes so strong that we cannot even control it. And even though intellectually we may know that this is what I have to do and this is what I should not do, still this desire, selfish desires, become so strong that at some point our mind becomes completely, what is the proper word? Control by this, and we cannot do anything anymore.
Brainwashed.
Okay, yeah.
Slave to the
Slave, yes, brainwashed. Our mind becomes totally controlled by this strong selfish desire, which we call lust. So then this becomes the reason that we engage ourselves in activities which may not be actually very beneficial for us. Do we see sometimes examples in our life or in the life of others for this? Someone to do something which actually is not beneficial for him, but still he cannot help himself and he is doing it. Drinking, for example, yes. Smoking. Something else? Drugs. Illicit sex.
overeating.
Overeating. You know it's not good for you, but still you cannot do anything about it. You just say, anyway, tomorrow I will think about this. Let me just now get the moment, get the enjoyment. Yes, good examples. There are many examples, and we can see practically. Lying, yes. Practically, we can see that the material world is full with stories that illustrate this point. Everybody, like if we take the nowadays leaders of the society, all the movie stars or music stars, if we see their life, we will see actually their life is full of these things. They were in a very, let's say, at some point of their life, they were in a very good situation. And because of uncontrolled senses, because of inability to do what they have to do, but rather do what they want to do, and they cannot do anything about it, suddenly their life becomes complete mess. One mind, I don't know why exactly this example comes to my mind now, but one thing that comes to my mind is the life of Mike Tyson. Maybe some of you know. After Mike Tyson becoming the youngest world champion of boxing, heavyweight category, after he achieved something that basically nobody else achieved before him, suddenly his life starts going more and more down. So do you know what's the reason?
Uncontrolled habits.
Yes, and particularly which one? It's obvious that in order to become the youngest world champion heavyweight boxing, he has to control himself extremely well, isn't it? Otherwise, how you are going to achieve this? Like, it's a heavy work. It's not just talent. I was going in Mayapur at some point taking lessons of Mridanga to try to learn Mridanga, and my guru of Mridanga, he was telling me, many people, they think to learn good Mridanga is 80% talent and 20% hard work. Now I will tell you it's the opposite way around. It's 80% hard work and 20% talent. So same thing for him. He was really pushing hard in order to achieve this. He was working very hard. After he achieved this, like there are some interviews. One can look for them online if he's interested. But there are interviews. He's saying that in one interview he's saying, I managed to become the youngest world champion heavyweight boxing because for 5 years I had completely celibate life. My mind was completely focused on only one thing. There was nothing else in my mind. Only I want to become the youngest world champion. That's it. And when he achieved his goal, then he said, okay, now is the time for enjoyment. I achieved my goal, now I have to get my reward. He started mixing with ladies, apparently with not very good character, and the culmination of this was that he had to go to jail, and from then on his life started going more and more down. Anyway, this is just one example. Many examples can be given, but the idea is that very often we know what is our duty and we know what to do intellectually, but still our mind is so much influenced from selfish desire that it's very difficult to control it, and at some point we just give up, we surrender. We don't surrender to Krishna, we surrender to our mind. We say, okay, I give up. I tried.
The demons.
Our mind is like a demon, yes. We try to control our mind, but it's practically impossible. At some point, little bit later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying to Arjuna, Arjuna, you have to control your mind. That's it. If you manage to control your mind, the battle, spiritual battle is already won, yes. And then Arjuna is saying to Krishna, okay, but actually, to tell you frankly, my realization is that to control the mind is more difficult than to control the wind. So you can try to control the wind if you like. See how it goes. Maybe 2 weeks ago with Pandava Prabhu, we went to Gita Nagari. We wanted to see this holy place. It's also a very special place. So while we were there, of course, devotees, not so many devotees, so they were eager to engage us in some service for the pleasure of Radha Damodar, which we said, sure, of course. We are servants, we have to do something for them. So the first day we had 2 services. We have to clean the walls of the kitchen. And then in the afternoon, they said, okay, now we are going to put plastic. They had like a big greenhouse, but it was not covered. So then we said, now we have to cover it with a plastic. We said, oh, okay, it doesn't look something difficult. So we put the ropes with the plastic, and then we throw the ropes on the other side of the greenhouse, and 8 people. We went there, and gradually we started pulling the plastic so that it comes over the greenhouse. And suddenly, while the plastic was going up, this wind came and started blowing, and it was not a strong wind, but somehow, yes, we 8 people, we hardly managed to keep up with this. And at some point, because we started pulling strongly and the wind was pulling the other direction, and just at some point, bam, broke the plastic. The plastic started flying in the other direction. So then we have to start the same operation again. After the second try, we decided, okay, it's impossible. It's impossible to control the mind, just like it's impossible to control the wind. So difficult. But of course, then we started praying to Krishna, and at the end we were successful. Third time we managed to do it. But it was difficult. It was really difficult. So many people. In the beginning, when we went there, and Dhruva Prabhu, he called for like 10 people, and I said, why he's asking so many people? Just some simple plastic. Now we are going to throw it like 2-3 people, and that's it. Job done. And then when we had these difficulties, I understood, okay, we need more people. 10 people are not enough to do this. So it's so difficult to control the mind. Later, in the next verses, next speakers, they will speak how this lust takes a different positions in the body of the living entity. From there, it's fighting with the living entity. So sometimes we manage by trying to live a pure way of life, we manage to purify our external lifestyle, external activities. And to some extent, we are able to control the lust. Basically, this is what we are trying to do by our spiritual process. We try to develop the mode of... Which mode? Of ignorance? Goodness, correct. We're trying to cultivate the mode of goodness. Why? Because it's very much favorable to control the lust. Srila Prabhupada is giving an example how different living entities, they are covered to different extent with this lust. And trees, they can be compared as an embryo which is covered by the womb, because basically you cannot see the embryo. It's very thick covering. So in the same way, the living entities which are in a plant form, tree form, they are very much covered by this lust. So their consciousness becomes very degraded. And then one idea better is the situation of the animals. Animals, they are compared with... What was the example? Who can tell me?
With the mirror, dust on the mirror.
Dust on the mirror, yes, correct. Dust on the mirror, again, the mirror is covered, you cannot really see image, but it's very easy to wipe. It's very, very easy. It won't take much endeavors to wipe, and then, okay, you can see an image already there. So in the same way, this is the situation of the animals. They are covered by lust, but still they can be benefited. They can be benefited. Gradually they can be uplifted. And the situation of humans is best. It's compared with a fire which is covered by smoke. Smoke is some kind of covering of the fire, but it's very meager. You can just make a movement with your hand and immediately fire will be there. So in this way, in the human form of life, we try to cultivate sattva guna, and this sattva guna gradually will help us to control, in the beginning, at least our gross senses. So generally, we can see that our life as a devotees, if we seriously follow the process of Krishna consciousness, our external senses to big extent are controlled. They don't create much problems. But who creates still problems? Who is that personality that still continues to create problems?
Maya.
Maya, yes, but Maya using what?
Mind.
Our mind, correct. Our mind still is troubling us so much. So the lust may not be manifested in the gross senses, but the lust just go inside. It's like, let's say, if there is a war, and you really nicely attack the enemy, what the enemy is doing? Just goes back and takes a better position, hiding somewhere, and is waiting for opportunity to attack. So in the same way, when we practice a little bit more strictly the process of Krishna consciousness, the lust goes back and hides. Where? In our subconsciousness, in our mind and in our intelligence. And now the question is, so what you are going to do about that? Now how we are going to purify our mind and our intelligence from Mr. Lust? What is the way to do it? Do you have some suggestions?
It's like evam buddhe tatha
Param
buddhya
bhutva.
samstapat manamatmana. Like from intelligence, so buddhi, using intelligence, you purify the intelligence. Using buddhi, using higher intelligence, we purify the intelligence, and then that purifies the...
With transcendental knowledge, you
Yeah.
can purify your intelligence.
So from
Good.
intelligence you can control the mind, because
Okay.
intelligence is higher than the mind.
Okay, so you are saying
I
that.
think that's in the shloka of Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, so you are saying that Bhagavad Gita is saying.
Yeah. Kamarupam Durasadam.
Okay, so by transcendent or by spiritual knowledge, we can control the intelligence, purify the intelligence, and then the purified intelligence can control our mind. Okay? We cannot say anything against Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? If Bhagavad Gita is saying, this should be like that. Yes, so basically,
Also through chanting and meditation.
through chanting, yes.
Yeah, because when we are working every day, we accumulate some toxic feelings and thoughts in our minds which mislead us through all these bad things. And in order to get rid of the toxicness, just like we, bathe ourselves or go to the restroom, we need to get our mind rid of the toxic thoughts. So chanting helps to get rid of toxic thoughts.
Yes, I agree. Chanting is definitely the remedy for this. As Srila Prabhupada is saying so often, the best cure, especially in this age of Kali, to get rid from lust and to get rid from contamination, from ignorance, is chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. 100%. Yes.
So I show how the two comments or how they work together, and then I add one. Gaurav's comment is Gaurav. His comment is, what's your name?
I'm Dinesh.
Dinesh, I thought that. Yeah. You came online, right? Before.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So Gaurav saying, you fortify your intelligence with spiritual knowledge, then you know how to direct the mind, what to think of, what to focus on. And then Dinesh is saying you focus on chanting Hare Krishna. So basically the intelligence is giving the direction to the mind to with higher knowledge to understand why to chant Hare Krishna, and then to direct to actually do it. And then that purifies the mind too. And then I just wanted to add my comment, which I hope you'll agree with as well. You agree with them. So the comment is, but the problem is that one's intelligence may not be getting fortified with the spiritual knowledge to provide the direction to focus on Krishna through chanting and reading and so forth. So by associating with devotees, to the extent your intelligence isn't working properly, then by the association of devotees, which is so nice, blissful, but also full of knowledge, then it can help substitute your intelligence for a higher intelligence to then direct the mind to focus on Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna and so forth.
Okay, I agree.
Because by ourselves we can make mistakes and be misled. So it's good to be in good company to get the directions repeatedly, every week.
So yes, we said that the transcendental knowledge can be very much helpful, which is 100% truth. Actually, that's why it is recommended that every day we read books like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. We have a lot of, yes.
The sadhus, the sadhu sangha.
Sadhu sangha.
Following and having your own spiritual master to get the direction, and from other sadhus to get the direction, because there are situations that we feel like we didn't control our mind, so it's affect us. We end up with some type of reactions.
Yes.
And to go back on a track, we need that direction, and that's usually
I agree.
the more advanced devotees can help, and spiritual master.
Yes, more or less Atmanivedana Prabhu said the same thing, Sadhu
Yes,
Sangha.
she
Of course, Mataji, you gave a little bit more private perspective that Sadhu Sangha in the face of the spiritual master, association especially with the spiritual master. Yes, all these things will help a lot. Transcendental knowledge will purify our ignorance. Because of ignorance, we think that we are something that we are not. We think that we are not spirit soul, we think we are the body, and that's why our desires go in the direction of gratifying the body, the needs of the body, not so much the needs of the soul. So spiritual knowledge can help us intellectually to understand, wait a minute, why I'm putting so much endeavors in the direction of the body. Okay, I have to maintain the body, but why all the endeavors? Rather, let me, big part of the endeavors go in the direction of feeding the soul, taking care for the soul. So transcendental knowledge is very, very important. Hare Krishna Mahamantra is doing the same thing, getting us rid from the ignorance. By getting in contact with Krishna, who is the purest object, we become purified. And then we also can understand, wait a minute, why I'm doing this. And of course, Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu, the devotees, they have this power to... the sadhus or the devotees, they are always well-wishers. Sometimes they may not look like that because we are too much attached to our way of perceiving the situation, perceiving our life. But actually, devotees, whenever they speak, whenever they say something, they are always well-wishers. And even if sometimes they are not 100% well-wishers, definitely Krishna is using them so that they do something in our life as our well-wishers. So at the end of the day also it's beneficial for us. Whenever devotee is doing something, whenever devotee is saying something, we should respect always. After saying that all this is very much true and it's very, very important to be able to control the lust, not just on a gross level, on the level of our senses, but also the lust which is in our mind and in our intelligence. Okay, before saying something else, I want to add something. How can we see when our senses are influenced by lust? This is very easy to see, isn't it? Yes, just our senses, they want gross sense gratification, like the tongue wants to eat whatever, the eyes want to see objects that give us pleasure, and so on and so on. All the senses, they just want gross satisfaction. So how can we understand when our mind is influenced by lust? How can we understand this? Yes.
Desire to be recognized.
Huh?
Desire to be recognized.
Okay, these subtle forms, you want to be recognized by others. This is a subtle lust. Yes. What else?
When you ruminate over and over again about it, but you can't stop thinking about it.
You
don't have control now.
you're obsessed about something. I want this. I want the last model of iPhone, or I want Tesla. I want this. I want that. Yes, obsession. Extremely strong desire for something which is actually material and it's temporary.
But there's fine line, right? You need to have ambition.
Yes.
Tyson did well for 5 years.
Yes.
He
Of course.
he should get, not fall off, but look for other things.
Yes. While we are in the material world, always there is a fine line, and always it should have a balance. But before coming to the point of balance, we should understand actually what's our situation. It's like if someone is sick, you can make a very good balanced lifestyle for him and a balanced diet, but before doing this, first you have to really understand what's the situation, what's the problem. So now first we are trying to see actually what's the problem, what's our situation, and then we will have to come out with some solution. Partially already we gave solution. Yes.
Yeah, just a comment, because in my daily dealings, I deal too much with too many people who are not in the top 1%, but in the top, 0.001% of the population. That's what I do. So I deal with them, big financial deals, and so it's just a comment. So Mike Tyson was doing well for boxers, and even for avoiding some sense gratification. but because he was doing it exclusively for the purpose of temporary gain, from a spiritual perspective, we would actually say he's actually no better off than the person who can't even make a punch correctly, and who's engaging in lots of sense gratification with lots of women. Because where are they both going? They're not, neither of them are going anywhere, except for one will get some more success in this, with his body than the other for some time. But unless one of them knows how to get success, that has to do with knowing that he's a soul, not the body, then the person who's successful materially must become in the same position as the person who had no success materially, and vice versa. So it's like a Ferris wheel. So, right, you know the Ferris wheel? In America, growing up, when you're kids, you all go on Ferris wheel. So it's a little it's a big ride. It's like goes around and around.
Yeah.
And so if you're up, you must go down. And if you're down, you must go up. So Mike Tyson, if he's going to become the best boxer in the material world, even before he became it, if he doesn't learn about how he's a soul and how to control his senses, not to become the best boxer, but in order to realize he's a soul and to love God, then for sure, because his goal is only something temporary, then he's going to lose whatever he achieved in the material world and come down. And the person who came down, after he suffers enough due to his bad qualities, he's going to get humble and learn how to commit austerities, just like Mike Tyson did, and then he'll do well in the material world. So therefore,
That's very good point.
thanks. So as someone who deals with people who are at the very top of society, that's all who I deal with all the time. But I can say with full confidence that it is not a particularly good thing to be in their shoes, because they're not going on average. They're not going closer to realizing their spiritual nature than the average person who makes minimum wage. They're both neither of them on average is interested in spiritual life at all. And therefore, one day he's rich, but just look, sometime later he'll be poor, whether this lifetime or the next. So the real thing is how to achieve control of the senses, not for the sake of doing well in the material world, but how to control the senses so that you can focus your senses on something spiritual. Then you never come down.
Yes, and also, as Prabhu was saying, we can see that everything that, even if we achieve a great balance from material perspective, very often they won't be balanced. Just because from a material perspective you cannot achieve a situation which is permanent. This is what Prabhu was explaining. So basically, balance without spiritual knowledge, it will be very difficult to achieve. And you are an intelligent person, you understand, that's why you are here. In order to have a real balance in life, we need to have the spiritual. People who are trying to achieve balance just by material qualification, material situation, they won't be successful. For some time they will have this balance, and then it's a question of time to go down, as in the life of Mike Tyson and so many other personalities. So anyway, back to the topic. Chaitanya was saying that we can perceive the lust in the mind by some subtle desires, like you want to be recognized by others, you want to show off that you are better than others, and gross lusty desires as well. Your mind just desires very strongly some material sense object. How can we perceive the lust in the intelligence? How lust will manifest in the intelligence? Selfishness, okay. In what kind of, can you give a little bit more particular example? What kind of form exactly this selfishness will be shown off?
Just being totally consumed with what you want and not caring about what others.
Yes. Even more specific. Can you go a little deeply? Someone has something?
Greed.
Yes, greed, definitely. All these qualities, Hare Krishna. yes, different concepts on which our life is based, which are selfish, which are contaminated by lust, by greed, by selfishness. Basically, we will have ideas for who are we, what is life, how we want to go through life, but all these concepts, all these opinions that we will have, they will be very much contaminated by this strong selfishness. So
the
this,
intelligence will start making mistakes and will not
because
be,
of that we will make
and
mistakes,
it
yes.
will lose its level of intelligence.
Yes, yes.
And it will degrade. You know, you won't get 10 out of 10 anymore. You will probably get
For
6
example,
out of 10 or 7 out of 10.
yes,
You
also.
know, the more you deviate into lust, greed, anger, overeating, and all those distractions of the mind.
We will make philosophy out of it. This is what intelligence make. When intelligence is contaminated, we will make a different philosophy out of it. Like, for example, people who don't want to follow the laws of God, the rules of God, what are they doing? They just make their own philosophy. Well, there is no God. Who told you that there is God? Who told you that there is laws that God creates? Who told you that there is a law of karma? Why have to obey your rules and regulations? No, I have my opinion. What is the world and what kind of rules I have to follow, and your rules, they are not part of mine.
The
So
very
basically,
existence of that person is totally ignorant because the very existence of that person is governed by the laws. If he breathes, he lives. If he eats, he lives. Otherwise, it doesn't live.
yes,
It's
he's
basic laws.
always controlled by the laws of God, but because the intelligence is contaminated by lust, he finds a way to go around it. Like, for example, he'll say, oh, I don't believe in God. Why? What's the problem? Why you don't want to believe in God? Well, because if there is God, that means there is a supreme controller. If there is the supreme controller, that means there is rules. And that means we have to follow the rules. Now, if you don't feel good to follow the rules, you have to make a new philosophy out of it so that you can go around the rules. So then it's very easy. There is no God, that means there is no rules, that means I can do whatever I like. So in this way, when our intelligence is contaminated by lust, we will start making our own philosophy.
So Prabhu, your question was, how do you know? I think this is your question. How do you know when your intelligence is covered by or infiltrated by lust? And I guess may I ask a question back about that? Like, it seems to me, or statement, I don't know. Seems to me that if it gets to that stage, unless you keep your friendship with the devotees, you spend time with them, you're kind of out of luck at this point.
You're lost.
Because you won't actually recognize it. Because the intelligence is the thing that's supposed to be, when your mind is, going here and there, the intelligence will say, yeah, but don't forget Krishna is God, bring it back.
Yes.
But once the intelligence starts coming up with these other ideas, then you have no, you have no context anymore to say, well, this is the right philosophy, not this one. If you're already focused on something else, then it's like,
Correct.
where's your help? Until
Yes.
you spend time with the devotees and they point out your mistake.
Yes.
Yeah?
It's exactly like that. Because when the lust is in the grown senses, we can immediately perceive and we can take action. Oh, this is not right. I have to do something. I have to correct myself. Or even when the lust is in the mind, still we perceive this. But when the lust is in the intelligence, it's even more subtle. Then it's even more difficult to catch it. And as Tatmanivana Prabhu is saying, if we don't have the help of someone who is a well-wisher and is close to us, and he will be able to tell us, hey, you're changing the philosophy, you are deviating from the reality, then we are lost. Someone has to help us. And this is the devotees, these are the devotees, as well as the spiritual master, because it is said that the spiritual master is the best well-wisher of the disciple. So generally when the spiritual master sees this deviation in the thinking of the disciple, immediately have to correct. That's why sometimes Guru is soft, sometimes Guru is a little bit heavy, because he has to cut down. He has to cut down the improper philosophies, improper way of thinking. So yeah, that's why we need the association of devotees. We need to regularly to read Shastra, because even when we are bewildered in our intelligence, after reading 1 hour Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, everything becomes so clear. It becomes so obvious. Wow, yes, this is the truth, this is the ignorance, this is the illusion. It's so obvious. And then again, when we don't read for a few days, immediately again our consciousness becomes contaminated and we don't know. So what is truth now? What is right and what is wrong? I don't know. I'm confused. And then again, when we dive our intelligence into Shastra, immediately, wow, yes, okay, it's obvious. And then of course we need the mercy of the holy name, because through the mercy of the holy name we can be purified, we can get free from this ignorance, from this illusion. And maybe the last point I wanted to make in this connection is that these things are very important, these things are fundamental for our spiritual practice, but there is also one other important aspect. We could say this aspect is secondary, but still it's very important. Some people are there, I don't know if they are coming for the program, or maybe you can ask
Sasha,
them.
you want to check? Sorry to interrupt the translating. It could be shelter other than Christian shelter that they're taking.
Shelter from the rain. Anyway, so the second point, or we could say the secondary point I wanted to make, which stays secondary, but still I think and I feel it's very, very important, that apart from purifying our intelligence so that we can very clearly see what is real and what is unreal, what is right and what is wrong, there is something also very important. We should find a ways to make genuinely our mind Krishna conscious as well. What means the mind to become Krishna conscious? The mind should start doing something in Krishna consciousness more or less naturally, because the mind wants to do it. Like when our intelligence is very strong, when our intelligence is purified, then it's very clear what is our duty. We said now the topic is duty. So because we know what is duty, and we can push. Now I have to do this, and now I have to do that, and now I have to do this. And we can kind of push ourselves and go through the spiritual practice, through the spiritual process. But then, the moments when the intelligence becomes tired, the mind immediately takes over. And if the mind is not pure, if the mind does not have pure desires, the mind goes immediately where? To the garbage. Yes. Okay, duty is done. Now it's time for holiday, fun. Yoo-hoo! Let me watch one movie now. Okay, make the popcorns. Come on. So immediately we come to the other way of thinking. So now what can we do about this? Well, the simple thing that we can do is we should find things which are directly connected with Krishna, which we really like to do. Because this is how the mind works. The mind, he likes to do something or he doesn't like to do it. And if he doesn't like, you cannot do anything about it. But if he likes to do it, then he can really become obsessed with certain thought. Like you can have your hobby and you can become a fan of something. One spiritual master was saying that the word fan comes from fanatic. You become fanatic on some subject, something like whatever is your field. So if we find something in Krishna consciousness and we become really fans of this thing, it can be kirtan, like we can see there are devotees, they just get the instruments and they start singing Hare Krishna, and 5 hours later, just like nothing for them, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, joke. They become so deeply involved in the kirtan that they forget about everything else. Or it can be maybe cooking for Krishna. You just become fanatic on topic of cooking, like you have 150 cookbooks for Krishna, and you know all the recipes and everything, and you're always ready to cook for Krishna, for the devotees. Or you become fanatic on the topic of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, like you know all the verses, and Prabhu, like I read something in one purport of Srila Prabhupada, it's amazing, I have to share it with you, come here. We have to find something in Krishna consciousness that really to absorb our mind. And then if the mind is absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then it becomes very easy. Because the intelligence knows, by association with the devotees, by association with Shastra, by association with the holy name, intelligence knows, yes, this is what I have to do. And then the mind wants to do this. The mind is saying, yes, this is what I want to do. And then it becomes very easy. Then Krishna consciousness becomes very natural for the practitioner. Before that is little bit battle, because the intelligence is saying one thing, but the mind often is saying what? Okay, now I will do my duty, but then you have to give me reward. Till 4 o'clock I'm working. After 4 o'clock, relax, that's it. So then it's a little bit difficult, because mind is always trying to find excuses to engage in something else. Oh, we should not be too much fanatics on a topic of Krishna consciousness. Like few hours, it's enough. Now let's just go and do something else. But when the mind likes Krishna consciousness, then it's not a question of duty and not duty. Then duty stops to exist. Then it's just a question of I want to do it. Then it becomes very easy. Then it becomes very natural. Of course, it may take a little bit time to achieve this, but one secret to achieve this is we should find devotees who are already fanatics. They have their obsession about something in Krishna consciousness. And if we associate with these devotees, we will also get it from them. We will also become fanatics. Really, we can become fanatics. Like, for example, one example that comes in my mind is our great saint in our temple, Brooklyn temple, Ram Roy Prabhu. He is real fanatic. Like, he is singing Hare Krishna, he is chanting Hare Krishna, he is eating Hare Krishna, he is breathing Hare Krishna. He's not doing anything else from morning to evening, just Hare Krishna, always. So when you associate with such a person, you kind of feel immediately, well, maybe I have to also become a little bit more serious about my spiritual life. Immediately you kind of become more enthusiastic about it. So that's the way, again, we come to the point of sadhu sangha. If we find serious devotees, fanatics, and we associate with them, we will also become fanatics one day. In a good sense, fanatics. Spiritual fanatics, pure fanatics, fanatics about Krishna. Srila Prabhupada also, in a good sense, he was the fanatic, we can say, in the Hare Krishna movement, because in his mind, in his intelligence, there was nothing else than Krishna consciousness. 100%, nothing else, even 108%. From morning till evening, even during the night, all his time, everything that he was doing was just Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And that's why he was so... all the devotees that they were getting in contact with Srila Prabhupada, they were immediately becoming like... what is the word? Yeah, they were becoming fanatics. They were fanatics even before that, but other things. Now they changed their fanatic tendency. But they were just attracted like iron from a magnet. Just Srila Prabhupada was so attractive for them. Why? Because there was nothing else, just Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. We were reading today one devotee, because today is the disappearance day of Janananda Prabhu, and one devotee was reading in the morning how Janananda Prabhu was sharing how he liked to come here in this place in the mornings. Why? Because almost nobody was coming here. So he is sharing that very often it was happening that I was alone with Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture just for me, Bhagavatam lecture just for me. And after that, Srila Prabhupada was cooking and he was feeding me. And that was it. And he felt so indebted that he said, okay, I have to reciprocate somehow. Like he's taking care in such a way for me, I have to do something. So he took all his savings and just said, Srila Prabhupada, I want to give you this for your printing of Bhagavad Gita. So he donated $5,000, which at that time was, I don't know how much. Maybe you know better, Fruit.
It's a lot.
Maybe like at least 50,000, maybe. No?
1970.
Maybe even more.
Inflation had
There's a lot.
more.
It was a lot for sure.
Yes. So, Srila Prabhupada was such a person. So Krishna conscious that just by
Probably a
associating
lot more than that.
more. Huh?
Probably a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, just Srila Prabhupada was making devotees to want to do something for him because he was so pure, so Krishna conscious. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Would you like to ask something, to share something? Yes, Chaitanya.
Prabhu, you were saying that in life we have to have a balance. We have to have spirituality in our life. Then our life is balanced. So my question is, if our life is just about spirituality, is that an imbalance?
This is the real balance. This is the real balance. But the problem is that generally you cannot jump for a second there on a totally spiritual level. It's just like, for example, if someone is drug addict and they cannot completely stop his drugs because he may have such a big crisis that sometimes people, they are just leaving their bodies. They cannot tolerate the physical pain, also the mental agonia that is in their mind. Just this desire is so strong, you cannot overcome it. So they have to balance it. The idea is that they become 100% free from this bad habit, but they cannot do it at once. So what they do, they start giving them drugs, but gradually they are decreasing the dosage. So in the same way, when we are still materially conditioned, we cannot totally stop our material activities because it's difficult. We are so attached to the material, our material concepts, our even gross material lifestyle we can sacrifice. Let's say you can say to someone, okay, just give it up. Give up your work, give up your car, give up your apartment, just go to the Himalayas. Maybe many people will do. But to give up our material concepts about life, this is very, very difficult. So gradually, this should be purified. And it will take some time. And that's why we could say that on our conditional level, balance means a good balance between spiritual practice and between our material needs. Then our mind can be kind of peaceful so that we can nicely practice our spiritual life. If we cut off too much our material needs, we can say they are illusionary, they are temporary, they are not real in a spiritual sense. But if we totally cut them out, our mind can become so much disturbed that we won't be able to do our spiritual practice. So that's why we have to find our balance between material and spiritual so that our spiritual practice can go on nicely. And one day we will become so purified that actually we won't identify at all with anything material, and then we can easily just go to Vrindavan or Mayapur or Jagannath Puri and just whole day take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, associate with the sadhus, read Bhagavatam, and that's it. One day this time will come also. It's okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Just I had to share two things. So about Ram Rai Prabhu, like once we were doing book distribution and one person, he was arguing with me, he was saying, where is that perfect person? So I didn't know, I just showed, I was like there, Ram Rai Prabhu was doing like very ecstatic kirtan and there was this one person and he was like, I haven't met any perfect person. But I was like, yeah, like that. So then he stopped arguing. And the second,
So it worked out.
I don't, I think it was 1 year back. I saw this Prabhu. I forgot your name. So, yeah, Anthony, with Ram Rai Prabhu, right in Washington Square Park. The first day you came. I think it was exactly 1 year back, Narsimha Chaturdashi, because Ram Rai Prabhu was explaining to this Prabhu, Narsimha Chaturdashi, just 1 year back. I never could imagine, like, and he was new, like, you didn't know anything, right? And the next time I saw him with the bead bag, like first time, like without bead bag, without nothing, like Ram Rai Prabhu was explaining, like, and very high concept. And I was like, how is he going to understand, like, and then about Narsim Dev, because I think he came for the first time. It was like Narsim Chaturdashi, like 1 day before. And so Ram Rai Prabhu invited him to the program, and, like, after 1 year. So, just his association, I can see, like, Ram Rai Prabhu's association, like,
It was very, very,
like
very beneficial.
like very quickly, So that's all I have to share about Ram
Thank
Rai
you.
Prabhu.
I was reading one purport, I think in the 4th canto. Prabhupada was saying that Sadhu Sangha is the most important factor in this world. There's a comment there.
Yes. When I was a new bhakta, I just started going, visiting the devotees. One time, one of the senior devotees were just about to go on Sankirtan, and we had a short conversation. And so he asked, so you are chanting already? I said, yeah, I'm chanting 2-3 rounds. And he said, so I want to ask you a question. Which is more important, to chant Hare Krishna or to associate with the devotees? And I thought for a while, and I said, well, to chant Hare Krishna, because it is said this is the most important. And he said, no, to associate with the devotees is more important. I said, how is that like? The goal is to chant Hare Krishna, not to associate with the devotees. He said, well, if you are chanting Hare Krishna but you are not associating with the devotees, most probably after a short while you will stop chanting Hare Krishna. And if you are associating with the devotees, even if you don't chant Hare Krishna, it's a question of time to start chanting Hare Krishna. So he said, that's why association is more important. Then I understood, okay. That means I have to come often to associate with the devotees. Okay, so maybe it's time for a little bit more kirtan,
Okay.
and then we can take some prasad. Panda? Asli man.
It is time if you want to say one.
У вас слышно гармонию? That's not bad. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Bhakti